That sounds like a Scary Movie Part 3, Deep in the Woods. Dude, I won't watch scary movies. My wife is like, oh, let's watch a scary movie. And I'm like, no. I don't want to have bad freaking dreams for 3 months. Like,
I don't. I don't either, and I don't want Ellie waking up in the middle of the night, freaking out, telling me to go check the house.
dude,
It happens every
yeah.
time.
Like, we already have flying squirrels in our attic. So which I hear, and I'm not about to add to the calamity that is the flying squirrels by thinking that I hear people or ghosts or people with machetes in my house. Just not.
Yep.
So maybe that's just me, but whatever. So, anyways, so I want to start. This is where I want to start. I want to start with an oxymoron, which is this: a PT that does CrossFit. You wanna explain that one to me? Because that's I like to start with a bit of controversy to get the people going, as Will Ferrell says.
And it's so sad that that is controversy. It shouldn't be controversy at all. But yeah, so I do CrossFit simply because I think it's the best way to ensure that I live a healthy lifestyle. And any practitioner, any doctor, any medical virtuoso, whatever that says differently, I don't know what they're talking about. So the fact that, and it's not necessarily CrossFit, it's the whole idea of functional fitness, right? It's the whole idea of if someone's chasing you, do you have a good enough heart rate response to run away from that and jump over the fence that's in the way from you getting away from them? Or maybe some rabid dog starts to attack you. Are you able to do what you need to do to get away from that? And yeah, so I think CrossFit is a really good expression of fitness to ensure that I can do those things. So absolutely, I will do CrossFit all day long in some version of it.
So the people that are listening, it's like, look, man, I'm never, I live in the suburbs. There's not many random dogs. For the most part, I don't watch scary movies, so I'm not, running away from people with machetes. Yeah, I mean, right, like, so step away. I agree with what you're saying. Now back into the conversation. For the average person, it's like, well, maybe I'm not going to be doing that. But I do see what you're saying, and I love that you said that, hey, there are people out there that deem these things as opposite, right? CrossFit and health, and certainly I think we'll get into sport versus health because there's obviously there's a lot of differences there. But I'm fascinated because, I mean, you're not just average at CrossFit. I mean, you made it on a team to a semifinal, and I'm look, people, I'm purposely saying this stuff, to give the man some credit, because otherwise y'all people just listening like, oh, he's a PT, F this, I ain't listening, right? So, but if I say some cool shit like this in the beginning, y'all are like, oh, okay, I see it. What do and then I've hooked you. So, anyways, podcasting 101, guys. Anyways, so bring me through the season of how did you get on a team, and then obviously we'll get into like the PT stuff. But I'm really interested because I actually don't know this story, so I'm really asking for myself too.
So I can go back as well to what you're talking about, kind of the CrossFit journey. But I remember the first time that I was kind of confronted with CrossFit, and I was in physical therapy school. I was a first-year physical therapy student, and at the time, all I was doing was chest and tries, back and bis, baby.
I was the girl
big.
muscles, baby.
So Mike Bergner came to South Alabama, USA, and he did this huge thing at the time where we had some really cool speakers come. Like we talked about Nick Winkelman, he was there. Mike Bergner, he was there. We had John North and all of his Olympic lifting craziness. That guy is absolutely insane, but I love watching him lift. But Mike Bergner came and he had us do the Bergner warm-up, and at the time I had no idea what that was, and that involved me sitting at the bottom of an overhead squat with a PVC pipe overhead, and I could not do it. I could bench 320 pounds, but I could not hold a PVC pipe over my head. And I look over, and there is this 120-pound girl just sitting there as content as possible in the bottom of an overhead squat. And at that moment, I'm thinking, I should be able to do this. I'm a human being. Why can't I do this?
Right.
And so that literally the next week, one of my best friends said, hey, you can come try this. So we went to a local CrossFit gym and gave it a shot. And the workout had overhead squats and burpees in it. And I had no clue what I was in for. and that was kind of my initial setting into CrossFit. So from there, I kind of took basically took 2 months off and totally just dove in to movement patterns and how do I move, how do I correct these things, how can I get at the bottom of a squat and be comfortable there.
So you were in PT school, so you were like using the stuff that you were probably learning, presumably, or no, or were you like, or was YouTube around at this time? God, I was ignorant.
YouTube was definitely around. One of my biggest influences was Kelly Starrett, the CrossFit PT, the guy who started everything K-Star. So I remember the first K-Star video I watched was I think it was his first video. It was like a picture of his crotch for 10 minutes talking about hip mobility. So that was my intro into a lot of this. Amazing. So we didn't get a ton of, in physical therapy school, I think it's changing now, which is a good thing. We didn't get a ton of the functional fitness side of things. I had to go outside the space to get a ton of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that's changing now. But as far as the team that you're talking about, so I was able to go and compete at the MACC this year, which was really cool on a team. And I was I think you know a little bit of the story.
I mean, I really truly know bits and pieces. I honestly don't know the whole story. So like just like walk me through, like you're like doing CrossFit every day. You're just an everyday CrossFitter, and then it's a true Cinderella story. They call you from the bench. I mean, like how does this happen? Like do you know you're decent?
Yeah. So I own the clinic. I own my physical therapy clinic. So I'm in here and I'm working every day. At that time, I'm probably doing CrossFit 3 to 4, maybe 5 days a week if it's a good week, because we're getting really busy. I'm working hard and all this stuff, but I'm not as focused on really trying to compete. I'm just trying to do it for health and fitness. So the Open goes through, and we do the Open, and I do well enough to go do I guess it's the quarterfinals is the next level. So I do well enough. I'm able to do the quarterfinals, and our gym, CrossFit Laminin, had a team, and they had 4 people on the team, and so the day that they were going to do the first team quarterfinal or team semifinal qualifier or quarterfinal, whichever one it is, quarters. When they were going to do that, the guy who was on the team, he had a bicycle wreck and ended up fracturing his elbow. So
the same day.
The same day. So Ellie, my wife, calls me, and it's 4:30 in the afternoon. I'm literally thinking, hey, I know they're doing these workouts that night. I'm gonna go grab a chair. I'm gonna sit in the corner. I'm gonna cheer them on. I'm just gonna watch them work out. And Ellie calls me and said, hey, how you doing? I'm doing pretty well. She said, so Aston's hurt. You want to do all the workouts with us tonight? I said, sure, why not? Absolutely, let's do it. So I was all right, I'm in, let's do it. And we had to do all the workouts on Friday night and Saturday morning, because another person on our team is a pilot and he was flying out of town. So we had to do all of them in a 2-day span. So I got called up, and somehow we qualified. I was really lucky with some of the quarterfinal workouts that came up. They kind of hit my things that I'm good at, so it worked out.
That's amazing. It really is. I mean, that, because you hear these stories constantly, and I'm one of the people preaching these stories, is that, in order to be the best, you've got to put in the amount of work that, it's a work capacity sport, and the best are doing, 5 to 7 hours a day. And to hear someone like yourself, and I know team is a different animal, okay? Like, I get it. But still, to hear someone like yourself that qualifies, or can help a team qualify, rather, I don't know. That's cool. So, anyways, you guys get to MACC. Any crazy stories there? Any bicycle accidents? Any, scooter accidents I should know about? Or was it...
No bicycle accidents at all. But I learned, it was funny. We get to the MACC, and we had to do the air runner on one of the workouts. It was the mile run, and Ellie, my wife, is just an animal on anything aerobic. Yeah. So she was sitting there, and she's actually giving me pointers on the air runner, because I did it in Wadapalooza like 3 years ago, so I'd never actually done one. And we come out and we do the workout, and I'm supposed to be one of the worst runners on the team, and somehow she told me to trick this air runner and into running, and apparently I can utilize my hamstrings really well on the runner, and I crushed it. So that was a total surprise to me. I really thought that was going to hurt bad, but it worked out.
Damn. So what was as you kind of look back on what was, from what I'm understanding, a really cool experience for you guys, what was something maybe that you took away from that weekend?
Yeah, so it really kind of, honestly, it made me want to train more. It did. Like I got into that weekend. I was able to get around all those incredible athletes. We were in the same training room as, Rich Froning, CrossFit Mayhem. That was really cool. But I think you've talked about it in one of your other podcasts. I want to say maybe with Sam Smith,
Yeah,
I want to say,
Sam
but
Smith.
you're talking about how it might not have been him, but y'all talked about when you get a taste of something, almost you want to get more of
Yeah,
it.
that's
So
true.
since then my training has gone up quite a bit. So I got like a couple of years, I guess about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was training a lot more, and then we just got busy. I didn't train as much, but now it's lit more of a fire under me since the MACC, and I'm trying to train as best I can. Working a full-time job and still trying to get in at least 2 hours a day, 1 to 2 hours a day at least. And with a couple of rest days in there. But if anything, it's made me kind of focus on my weaknesses more. So because I would love to have more time, I don't have as much time. I really just kind of go after my weaknesses more than anything else. And hopefully, when it comes time to the open and some things like that, I've trained my weaknesses so much, my strengths haven't got that much worse, and maybe I can make a dent in this thing a little bit. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, what you just said, I think, is really powerful, and I think for I don't know anyone listening that is pursuing anything, and it kind of goes back to I know we've had discussions. We both enjoyed Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
and it brought me back to if you've read his 12 books or 12 books, 12 rules for life, an antidote to chaos, I think is the subtitle of that. Anyways, point is, great book, guys. He has a rule in there, because obviously he's outlining his 12 rules for life, and he has a rule in there that says, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. And I don't think, and I would even change that a little bit in today's world. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expected. I think a lot of people, myself included, fall into this trap of, other people want me to do this. Other people have this explicit or complicit, whatever, expectation on me to do X, Y, Z. And I think when you can step back and just say, man, I really enjoy training. Like, I really am inspired by people that are this fit. I'm really inspired by whatever, the weekend, the people, the competitors. I don't know. I think there's something really primal in that moment where if you can really tap into that, it's like that in itself is motivation enough to get better at whatever it is that you're doing, to sustain you in a way for whatever you're doing. And I don't know, just hearing you say that, it just kind of brought me back to that that rule. And it's something that I think about a lot is what I am doing, and I ask myself this a lot, is what I am doing actually meaningful to me?
Yeah, absolutely. C.S. Lewis has a quote where he says, it's the things that you find repulsive and repugnant that you need to look into more than anything else, because that's when you'll learn the most about yourself, is those things that you really have question marks about. And if we're talking about, training weaknesses or what's going on, like train your weaknesses until they don't become so weak, and hopefully everything else will kind of come with it. And that's really that weekend. Like, seeing all those incredible athletes up there, and even the people on my team. Like, I was definitely low man on the totem pole there, but just seeing how much they put into it and how serious it was. Even some of the team athletes, like, I don't know, I didn't know what to expect. I guess I played college basketball, and we took that incredibly serious. Then to get up there, and you saw the good teams when they were going to warm up, it wasn't playing around. It wasn't messing around. It was time to go. And then you saw the teams that weren't so good, at the individuals who weren't as good, and they were a little more flippant about it. And I guess I appreciate that. I appreciate that you can line up to the starting line, and if you're serious about it, it's time to go. You're not messing around. So
To you, you just outlined that observation. Did you have that observation there at the MACC as well?
yes, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So definitely some of the better teams, and really, Tia was there. Jason Hopper, I think he won the MACC, and Medeiros was there. And I would watch them. I thought it was so cool. I would go back there and watch them, in the box and warming up. And man, they're in the zone. Like, it's like Kobe Bryant before a game. Like, that's the way they looked. And if you were a little nicer, like Tia's super sweet when somebody comes by and and they wave at her, she'll wave back, but then it's right back to the barbell, right back to what she's doing. And I appreciate that a ton, that people can stay focused like that, especially in CrossFit, where it really is fitness limited. Man, there's, you can get in the zone in basketball, you can get in the zone in other sports, and you can play outside yourself. But in CrossFit, it's really hard to play outside yourself. You got to stick to your strategy.
That's really interesting. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, maybe other people have spoken about this, but I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it put so eloquently. That well, actually, you know what? Could just say that again for me. I want to like soak that in one more time. Yeah,
Okay.
that was good.
Yeah. So like in other sports, in basketball, football, baseball, you can get hot. You see, bad teams like March Madness, Sweet 16. You see people upset someone, so you can kind of play outside yourself. If you get into some sweet spots, maybe you're playing the right opponent, a certain defense comes up. But in CrossFit, you're only so fit and you're only so strong. So before the workout starts, you pretty much know what you're going to be able to do. There may be some very few outliers, some rare outliers where you can just go ham. And I really don't even think so. I think you're limited by your fitness and your strength, and it's set up by your training and your strategy. Absolutely. So you can't really play outside yourself much. Everything in CrossFit's done beforehand, and then you get to the competition or whatever, and you're just doing what you've done before for that moment.
A friend of mine, excuse me, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said this to me the other day, and I thought, man, shit was deep. He said, there is nothing more true in life than a man's absolute strength. So there's nothing more true in life than a man's absolute strength. And anyways, it kind of goes back to what you said. It's like you can either lift the barbell or you can't. I mean, there really is no in between. It's like, even if you get the PR, like, you've built the capacity to be able to do it. You expressed it in that moment, but yeah, man, that's really good. CrossFit is a sport you can't play outside your system. Man, that's good. I'm gonna chew on that for the next couple of days. That's gonna be good. Okay, so you guys go to the MACC, learning experience. I know that from what you've said to me is, from our conversations, was the worm was a kick in the face, mouth, gut, arm, leg, body.
That worm.
Yeah.
That was bad.
And you look at people like CrossFit Mayhem, right, that's so dadgum good at it, and then you look at, I call everybody else, right? The normal folk, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, it really, honestly, that was something that was surprising to me, is the worm cost us so bigly. But so big. That was for so many other teams too. I don't know if there's as much of a separator, at least at the MACC, between Mayhem and everybody else. Well, Mayhem, if you look at some of the MACC results, they didn't win all the events. Yeah. And some of the teams, when the worm wasn't involved in one of the workouts, like, there's a lot more disparity in the rankings. So it was surprising to me how much of a separation without the worm that there really wasn't there.
So is the plan for you guys to try to run it back this year, or have you gotten that far?
Absolutely. If we can, we've got, we've talked about this before with Ashley and her training and some of that stuff, and just, whatever happens. But at the gym where I go to, CrossFit Laminin, there's some really good local athletes there, and I would love to say I can make the team. I might not even make the team. I'm trying to. I'd love to, but we definitely got to get a hold of a worm and train on that. I've learned that the hard way. If you don't train on the worm, you're just wasting your time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, someone that we've referenced in this podcast a couple of times, or Sean's reference rather, is his wife Ellie. Anyways, just for those listening, if you want to be really disappointed in your fitness, you can go look up Ellie's. What was it? 21 point. What was the snatch dumbbell repeat workout? 21.2.
Yeah. Was it 21.2?
I think.
What was it? 1, 2. Yeah.
Anyways, whatever the snatch.
Repeat of 17.3.
Yeah. Whatever the repeat of 17.3. You guys can go look at that. That's his wife. So, anyways, world class at at those two movements. Literally world class. Anywho, so I want to get into the PT side of things, because I do think it's interesting that you do work with, and this is where I think a lot of people can get a lot out of this. You do work with athletes, you do work with powerlifters, you do work with weightlifters. You're sure you work with the guy or gal that's trying to rehab their back or their knee, and I'm sure you do those things, and that's great. If we get to that, maybe we do. But for the people that are listening to this, I want to stay more towards the competitive side of the sport, and what you do kind of can help that. And there's this interesting thing that a lot of people think that, well, if I have enough mobility, then and I roll out enough and I do all of these things, that I won't get hurt, right? It's and I'm not saying I move the prettiest. I'm not saying I just found that not to be necessarily true. I find injury is inevitable with the amount of volume that CrossFitters do, and it's like, how do you manage that? So maybe you can talk a little bit to movement that may prevent that. Can it happen? And then we can go into the process of kind of what happens from there.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of little things there we can pick apart. So two is there a move? Can movement prevent it? Mm-hmm. Can moving perfectly, quotations, perfectly prevent an injury? And we're just not seeing that. We've got pounds and mounds and tons of research talking about the quintessential perfect deadlift, where the back looks perfectly smooth, the hips are back, everything looks good. We're not seeing a difference in injury rates compared to that, and like your powerlifting deadlift where the spine is flexed and you're curled over and you're lifting the big Atlas stone, whatever it is. There's not a ton of difference there, but I believe the sweet spot in a lot of it is how you prepare beforehand, just like everything else. So for a CrossFit athlete, do you have your nutrition tied in? Are you sleeping? Are you going through the 5 sleep cycles every night? Are you recovering properly? Water intake, all of these things play a huge role in your performance and your recovery after you perform. So if you got trash recovery, then your injury rates are going to skyrocket. And that's probably the greatest thing I can tell you is everything you do beforehand and after you work out matter more than the workout itself as far as injury prevention. So as far as movement goes, there's definitely ideal movement. So for instance, if you have a really good Olympic lifting form, like I love watching some of the Chinese lifters like Liu, man, he just looks so good. It's incredible how he looks, but if you picked apart those movements, they would violate what is considered, don't put your knees over your toes. Don't let your knees come inside your toes. That's all just stuff that people have said a long time ago, and it's not true. But the way Lou looks, just everything's so smooth. There is definitely an ideal movement for smoothness, for power output, for strength, but there's not as much there to prevent injury. So your injury prevention is everything you do beforehand, not just with sleep, not just with recovery. Those are the big ones, but also with how you prep your body. How well do you know the movement? It's not a mobility thing. Mobility is just a sign of how much stability you have. In fact, mobility is almost a myth. If you're missing shoulder range of motion, it's not because you don't have the mobility. That's true, but it's because your mind is not neurologically aware of the range that you're missing. Okay. So at the end of the day, mobility ends up being a myth.
Right there, because that was like a nugget, and I don't, and you just whipped over that like it was nothing. Okay, so let me understand this correctly. You're saying that if, and now granted, I'm sure there's exceptions. I'm just going to, there's always exceptions, right? But just in general, you're saying if I don't have the thoracic mobility, or right, that it could be there, but that my mind is not making the neurological, I'm just using your words because it was fancy, neurological connection to achieve or to access maybe that range of motion. Is that me understanding it correctly?
Absolutely. It's the whole reason I couldn't get in the bottom of an overhead squat with PVC pipe over my head. Okay. Absolutely. So it's really a concept of, for an overhead squat, for example, a lot of people say it's my shoulder. My shoulders just can't get them locked out. It ends up not being your shoulders, exactly what you said. It could be the T-spine, the thoracic spine. There is a sliding moment there. in the entire spine. And unless you have trained that movement and you're neurologically aware of what's going to happen, we call it kinesthetic awareness, or really even proprioception for that movement. Unless you have an understanding of where that's supposed to slide for that movement, then it's foreign to your body. So you don't have the muscle contraction to do it.
Yeah, I really find that a lot, especially, with like newer athletes that are kind of getting under the bar, getting under the snatch or the clean kind of for the first time. It's it really is. It's like it's body awareness, and I think like before, I don't know, for those that have their CCP and went through OPEX, like before really OPEX came around and like started to explain like, hey, we should maybe start with just like stability, right? Then, I mean, and don't get me wrong, that stuff was out there, but they just kind of put it all together for CrossFit. Anyways, I won't get on a tangent about that, but
yeah, no, that's good. That's where like you watch a lot of the early K-Star videos, and that's who I used to watch a ton of. It was all mobility. He's changed that since because we've had so much come out about it. But if you're just hitting your ankles all day long, if you're just rolling out, you can't expect any of that stuff to have any turnover for you. You have to actually put into work. And that's kind of the theme behind any good athlete or anybody who moves well, is that they're putting in the hard work. They're not doing all the passive stuff. Passive stuff is exactly what it is. It's passive. Active stuff is your body learning the movement. Our body learns through a muscle contraction. If there's no contraction, there's no learning, there's no turnover.
So outline for people, so it's like, just because we're on the snatch overhead squat, and I know a lot of people struggle with that. I know I've struggled with it. Gosh, I could post a video right now and people would probably laugh. I mean, really, like it's bad. Like one day I'm going to post a video. I really am, because it's gnarly. So give an example of like the things that people are doing that maybe aren't getting them to where they want to get to, and then give an example of kind of the active thing that you believe that would get them there. Then let's just stick with the snatch because we're already on it.
Okay, so first snatch. A lot of people love to foam roll. Now I'm going to hit my T-spine with a foam roller before I get into the snatch. So let me pause and say this. That's not bad prep. Like as far as like right before the movement you go, it's going to get you a little bit more open. It's going to get the joints to slide and glide a little bit because we want them to slide and glide. But if that's all you ever do, that's all you do every day, you're not going to have any turnover. It's never going to turn over to it. Which the best possible thing you can do is, I mean, to make a diamond, you got to put pressure on coal, is you need to get into the position. You need to get into the position. You go through heavy isometrics and you go through heavy eccentric training. You need to get into the position, challenge your body, threaten your body to a point where it has to respond. Half what we're doing as a coach or a physical therapist is I want to make your environment so difficult for you that your body is so challenged by it that it's increased your muscle activity tremendously. Neurologically, you are fully aware of the situation, and that's when you start to learn. So as opposed to just wasting your time with all these mobility myths, all these things, get into the position, force yourself into the position, and see what you can do. That would be, I call them snatches with a ride down. You catch a power snatch, that's as low as you possibly can, ride it down to the lowest position you can, and hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, and then load it up.
Yes, okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what are some, because you said eccentric loading and all these things, like, all that sounds good. Like, I agree with all that, but what does that actually mean for people doing it? So you gave an example of catch the power snatch as low as you can, write it down. By the way, guys, if you didn't know, a squat snatch is just a miss power snatch. I just blew your mind. Anyways, moving on. That one was free. I didn't even charge for that one. Or it should be. Some people's feet and mechanics. But this isn't a show about that. But, okay.
And that's a whole other thing. Before you move on, let me say that too. Like, perfect practice is a thing. You got to, if you're just, so many times, and this is such a problem with me, is I see people repeating, like, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So I see people repeating these movements with poor form. They're putting the training in, but if you continue to do something with poor form, it's just like building a bad habit. You're building poor neurological awareness around that. You're strengthening this bad movement. So you've got to train perfectly. So just another example is like snatch liftoffs, or overhead squat liftoffs. You're at the bottom of overhead squat, and you're going to come up from the bottom. So putting yourself under all that pressure and then creating the muscle contraction to get up out of it. That's another good way to train it as well. They're tough. It's not easy.
But you can start light. You can start with like a trainer bar, 15 pounds or something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so those are all good things. Something that that I heard you say, and I wrote it down on my sticky pad here, is and guys, by the way, like when you're having a conversation, this is just good life advice. Ask questions. Like ask people why they believe, even if you believe it. Even if I believe what he's saying, I'm still going to ask him, hey, explain that. Why do you believe that? Don't just assume that you both understand eccentric loading patterns, right? Right? Because he could have a different idea. So, some people say, oh, you ask the dumb questions. It's like, no, I'm trying to understand. We need to do more of that. Understand before we just run our mouths. All right, that was free too. That was number 2 thing that was free for all the people listening. You talked about Lou. Lou is a famous weightlifter, and God, he's beautiful. Well, okay, let me specify. His movement is beautiful, and this is interesting because I've heard this a lot, and I used to get told this, and then when I understood it, I was like, mind blown. You said something that was interesting. I wrote down. You said sometimes we could look at Lou and we could say, oh, well, his movement isn't perfect. We could pick it apart and say, oh, well, for example, you said at the bottom, we see his knees come in, right? And some people in the space may call that a valgus knee, right? That's a fancy term for it. So my understanding is valgus knee, so knees coming in, is our body's ability to create force through the floor. Is that true or false? And I'm asking, like, I don't know. That's just, now it's my understanding. I firmly believe knees should never come in, and now I'm on the other end that's like, it's okay if they come in a little bit. Can you kind of beat that myth out?
Honestly, I think it's fine either way, and because we can break down the science of it. So when you're at the bottom of a squat, the very bottom, you're at full depth. The muscle, the muscle that's the strongest, got the strongest force, the strongest fulcrum at that position is the adductor magnus. So it's on the inside of your leg. It literally runs from your groin to the inside of your knee, or really the inside of your thigh. But whenever it contracts, because it's the strongest mover you have, the knees are going to shoot in because it's so powerful. That's why we work so hard to build external rotation. And everybody preaches external rotation to their hips. Drive your knees out. Drive your knees out. The reason we do that is because we want to build a powerful wall for that adductor magnus to really, really ground against.
Interesting.
So we're trying to build something it can pull hard into, and that is the force to the ground that you're talking about.
Okay. So because and the first time I realized this was I was watching. I referenced her earlier, Tia, and Tia will catch. Well, I shouldn't say catch. All the weightlifters just cringe. Tia will receive the bar at the bottom of the squat, whether that's a snatch or a clean. And when she receives it, just like you said, really deep flexion, knee flexion, bottom of that squat, and I see her knees come in, and I was like, man, that's like, she's like top of the sport, and like if her knees do it, then, well, and I'm not saying I should just cave my knees in and look like a duck or nothing, but anyways, I was just asking because, and then I started to read up on it, and I was like, okay, people have quote unquote changed their opinion on this, and because you hear all these coaches just cueing knees out, knees out, knees out, as you're coming up, and sometimes that's not the best thing for us. We just need to like push against the ground, and our knees will do what our knees do. And I'm not saying that I don't know, that we shouldn't do work on that external rotation, but I was just curious, and I heard you say it, and I wanted to follow up on it.
No, I fully agree with that, and we can go further into it too. I know we're not talking about much, but for general population, if you don't allow movements like that to where your hips are dropping below parallel, the knees are crashing in, as soon as it happens in real life, that's when bad things happen, is when you're not used to it. So
Interesting. Like you tear stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like that dog starts to chase you and your heart rate skyrockets, you're not prepared for it, and you have a heart attack, and the dog eats you alive. Yeah,
well, let me tell you guys, if you're not afraid of dogs chasing you and getting over fences, then yikes, you should. Okay, so inevitably, in a life cycle of any athlete that I've ever heard of, and we've hinted at this, injuries are inevitable to some extent, whether that's in the sport itself and the training for the sport, but it's just part of it. And I want to start small, and then we can kind of get larger with like larger injuries, whether it's back or shoulders, which seem to be kind of what CrossFitters deal with, backs and shoulders. Anywho, but we're going to start with nagging little things, whether that's typically nagging little things and I'll ask before I say, in your experience of treating CrossFitters, powerlifters, weightlifters, what do you see as the nagging little pains that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
The one that comes out or comes up the most is honestly the shoulder, because you can get by a lot with those shoulders, but nagging stuff comes up a lot with the shoulders, and nagging things turn into big things quickly. So I can go ahead and talk
Please.
about like how do you deal with the nagging injury?
Yeah, go ahead.
Man, like again, it comes all the way back to: are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? Water is the lubricant of your body. Like the joint fluid, synovial fluid, is 99.9% water. You have a tendonitis in your shoulder. Between the sheaths of the tendon is water. If you're dehydrated, everything's going to hurt worse. So, and I mean, you would think and I hope, and I think this is true for most people, when you start doing CrossFit, for some reason, I think because you feel the pain of the workout that you're in just innately, you want to start taking more care of your body. You want to eat better, you want to sleep better. But man, I've treated a few CrossFitters when I ask them what's going on, or how much water do you drink? They're like, oh, I drink coffee. That's it. Man, we get some water in us, that's going to change the game for all these nagging things and the big things too. But also the trouble, and this will lead us into something else, the trouble with treating a CrossFitter or an elite athlete is the amount of pressure you have to put them under. Because if you take someone who's deconditioned, who doesn't work out as much, you can apply some of the functional movements. You can give them some isometrics, some eccentrics, some things that challenge people, and they get better quickly because those are foreign to their body, and their body's going to adapt so much from it. But if you take someone who's already exposed to that stuff, and I forewarn CrossFitters for this, and elite athletes and endurance runners, anybody who pushes their body to the edge, when you come into rehab and when you're treating something, we've got to push you to that edge every time. You're going to be sweating. Your heart rate's going to be incredibly elevated. We want to get that positive hormone response. We want to flood your body with human growth hormone with what we're doing in rehab. So for the nagging injuries, if you're going to treat them, most of the time for a nagging injury, if we're going to do something with shoulders, before you work out, you want to get it really warmed up. Well, that warm up for your shoulders is going to be a little bit further. It's going to really include all the activity of the muscle. And the same thing for big injuries. If something nasty happens, and like a low back or something of that nature, I've got a guy right now who he's been doing CrossFit for 12, 13 years. He's got a nasty low back injury. And his first time in the clinic, I had him hold an empty barbell for 2.5 minutes. We did it 5 times in a deadlift position. So
just like the bottom of a deadlift? Just
really about the second pull. So right at the kneecap. But he held it five sets for 2.5 minutes, and he was shaking like crazy, and it was brutal. And that's true when you're an elite athlete, because your body's so used to the threat of exercise. We've got to find new ways to threaten you in the ways we're really trying to rehab you. Oh
man, I was listening, and I should have been writing stuff down. Usually I write things down when you talk, but that was so good. And oh man, okay, we're gonna have to rewind because there was a lot in there. Yeah, okay, so this is very interesting, right? And I kind of get what you're saying, right? Because in order to get adaptation, it's like this. Guys, it's kind of like the adage of like, you want to build muscle, you got to tear it apart type of deal. Okay. Mm-hmm. So here's where I kind of want to just ask a question, and we don't have to get down this rabbit hole, but a lot of people say things like while I have you, just common myths that I hear. Like my glutes don't fire. Like I hear that all the time, and I'm like, well, I don't honestly know what that means, because I'm like, if you sit your ass on the toilet and you take a poo-poo and then you get up, like I think that's a definition of your glutes firing. But absolutely, you're like a doctor of physical therapy. I'm not. I'm a podcast host, so a little bit different credentials. Anyways, real quick, can you touch on that?
So, yeah, your glutes are firing regardless. Your glutes are going to fire. But, I mean, we see it all the time. You take someone who doesn't train and they do EMG studies versus someone. So EMG is basically they're putting a node in the muscle, seeing how active it is.
Is that like the electrode thing? Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, literally. It's actually, we actually have a term for it. We call it, well, not a lot of us, but I do. I use it. I call it trucker butt. It's when you imagine a trucker. You're going for these long hauls and you're sitting there for forever. Well, your glute activity, when you get out of the truck, and if you do that chronically for years and years and years, it diminishes drastically.
Okay.
So yes, your glutes can fall asleep. They're always active though, or else you're right. You would get on the throne. You wouldn't be able to get off. So they're always there. But
Okay.
yeah, pain itself. When we do have pain, especially if you have a hip pain, it can decrease the amount of muscle activity you have in your glutes by up to 30%. So that it's always active, but just depending on the level of activity.
Yeah, I just see these people that's like, oh, I need to do more glute bridges and banded monster walks. And I'm like, look, I do those too. Like, I think they're great warm-up. I love the monster walk and the poor man's leg curl and all that. Like, I do all those. Like, those are good, man. Like, they get my hips and my hammies and my butt. Like, yeah. I mean, firing
I mean, they may not know
is
how
a...
yeah, and you know this as a coach, probably. I'm sure you have athletes like this, but they may not know how to utilize it. They may not know how to utilize
okay. I got you.
their glutes. We do seminars and we talk about everybody wants to be this quad dominant athlete. And there's nothing wrong with getting those quads going, but it's like a 4-cylinder compared to the V8 Hemi that is the glutes. And man, like if you're not able to utilize that, if you're doing weird things with your movement pattern, we talked about this a minute ago. I think the number one thing with movement pattern when you're trying to move a barbell for sport is the velocity of the bar. So if you watch your pattern, anytime that velocity stops or changes or anything like that, you really need to analyze what you're doing there, because that is something. I will go ahead and say this: if that's happening, then your odds of injury are going to go up.
Hold on.
And you're not going to be a stronger, powerful.
Your odds if what? If you move the bar slow? Is that what you said?
So if we take the snatch again, and like the hitch, you see a lot of hitching in snatching.
Yes, my wife does it.
So
Anyway.
you said that, I did not. So I'm gonna let you pay the price for that.
Continue.
But yeah, really around that third pull, around that triple extension, you see a lot of times that barbell will come to a stop, and when that happens, we've got some studies on this in other sports. So the force at the low back exponentially increases. So instead of having this smooth movement coming up where the force of the bar is scattered throughout the entirety of your body, when you hitch right there, it's going to be in a few places. All that force is going to culminate in a few places, and then you've got to rip it.
So it's almost like, and this is my understanding, so tell me if I'm wrong, it's almost like coming to a stop and then restarting again. It's like you have to create more force, just like you would if you were to get it off the floor. Is that what you're saying? Is that my understanding?
Absolutely. And just in that position, it happens to be that where you have to produce the force is the low back in that position, unless you're moving throughout it smoothly. But yeah.
So, and I don't want to hijack the podcast on getting good exercises for my wife, but I'm going to hijack the podcast. Guys, you can get your own podcast if you don't like it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, this is just what I get to do. So, okay, like for her, right? We've tried a lot of things, and a lot of it, and I'm sure you see this, and I'm sure there's more people than just my wife dealing with this, so I think there's some carryover with coaches listening, with athletes listening.
Absolutely.
A lot of it's neurological, and what I mean by that is just like, it is, just like you said, it's literally movement patterns, motor patterns over and over and over and over and over again, just like you brush your teeth, just like you start a car. Like, it's just like your body just knows, tie a shoe, your body just knows what to do. It's just a pattern your body knows. And so it's very difficult, right, to tease that out in another's sense of the meaning. And, for people like that, how do you, this is a big question, goodness gracious, how do you rewire the brain? Because it really is rewiring the brain, right?
Yeah. It is. It's fully rewiring the brain. You're changing those motor patterns, those movement patterns. And this is the tough part. And we can tell a story about Kobe Bryant changing his shot form when he got to the Lakers.
Please, go for it.
His shooting percentage drops one year because in that year he changed his shooting form, because he knew the form he had before wasn't going to get him where he wanted to go. So he had to change. And that's huge for a basketball player, to change your form at all. It's massive, especially playing at that level. But yeah, so the hard part is sometimes you got to come back to square A, and you got to go through those patterns at really, really light load, and that's tough for athletes to do, especially competitive athletes, because they're used to lifting some heavy weight. So we teach this, we train this. One of my favorite things to do with an athlete like this is first off, two things. So I'm a big fan of a catch it as high as you can complex. So maybe you're gonna end up in a squat snatch eventually, but you're gonna take a barbell, and your whole job is to catch that barbell as high as you can, and you're gonna increase that load. So as you're doing that, you're not gonna be able to muscle snatch anything if you're hitching. If you start to hitch, with a little bit of weight, you're not going to be able to move that bar at all, because it's going to stop all your movement. So that's a functional way of doing it. So I'm going to really give a different internal, we're not an external cue. Throw it to the ceiling as high as you can, as heavy as you can. You're going to move the barbell smoothly through that range of motion, and then we're going to try to slowly turn that over into a power snatch, and then more into a squat snatch. That's one way I like to do it. And then I love to put on some complex, another functional way, but like something that's going to put you under load. So like a low hang, high hang, and then, or a high hang, a low hang, and then just a regular squat snatch, to where you're actually having to go through those technical patterns, and it gets so heavy that if you screw up your technique, you're going to miss the bar. So really trying to put you under fire in that regard from a technical aspect, not necessarily worried about the weight from a technical aspect. But because you're doing a complex, it's going to challenge your body more. It's going to increase that intensity. So those kind of complexes, those functional ways of doing it. And then we have the other way, where I actually love to almost reverse the pattern and move through it. So if we have a barbell overhead for a snatch, we're going to have you here in the power snatch reception, or maybe at the top of a muscle snatch. And we're going to drop that barbell down and plyometrically come back up. We're going to tap the ground and come all the way back up, and kind of move things in reverse. To get the stimulus we want. And that may be a way of breaking it down. Then simply going back through your initial barbell drills that you do with people when you're teaching the snatch. But the good thing is, if you take someone like a Kobe Bryant or someone like an elite athlete, when you make those changes, they've got so much awareness of the movement as a whole. So when you make a change, they're going to pick it up much faster if they buy in. And that's the truth of everything. You have to buy into starting back to square A to get to where you want to be.
And I think that's what's so amazing about elite athletes. You look at the freestanding handstand push-ups. It's like, yeah, some people had done them right at the games, right? I'm sure people practice them. Everyone's practicing them now. But there were other people that haven't. And it's amazing to me the adaptability, what you said, of elite athletes. They are, to be elite is to be synonymous with adaptable. Am I
Amen. That's good.
Okay, yeah.
You need to quote that.
Every now and then I say some good shit. It's just getting me to the point where I can do that. So, we've talked a lot about recovery, and one of the things that you've talked a lot about is sleep and water. And look, I'm a huge fan of sleep. I want to just go and say this. I am the sleep princess. Everyone has their way of tracking their sleep. Mine is a Whoop. Whoop, sponsor me, please. Look, I really like it, just because I am OCD. And here's the way I look at sleep, guys. Is like, let's just say we didn't have the word sleep in the English language. We didn't have a indicator for what sleep was. And then all of a sudden, this scientist, real brilliant guy, comes along, wins a Nobel Prize, says, hey, this is what sleep is. This is what it does for your growth hormone. This is what it does for your recovery. It would be freaking illegal. All right? And I say that because it's so anabolic. And I use that word purposely to get your freaking attention, to go, man, maybe I should pay attention to this, because, and I get it. Some people can't sleep 7+ hours a night. But I'm just telling you, from my experience, sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night is what is needed to be an elite athlete. Mm-hmm. Let me say it this way. You're at a disadvantage if you sleep less than 7 on someone. Eventually that stuff's going to catch up. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Even to the extent of, I would even say this: if you're an elite athlete and you're missing sleep, say you have a hard night sleeping and you're supposed to wake up and go through one of your first training sessions of the day, and you slept pitifully, I would almost say you're more benefited by skipping that training session and getting more sleep.
Yeah. Little hacks that I've done is I keep it as cold as possible in my room. That's just something, and give people specific stuff. I like sleeping 67, 68 degrees. That's me. I'm a big sweater, so, and not like I wear a sweater, like I sweat my ass off if I don't. So I know, colder the better. And Another thing that and there's some studies on this too, is like sleeping, almost naked. And look, guys, I'm just sharing things that I've learned, okay? And you can take what you want, but I'm just trying to help. Sleeping almost naked. There's other studies that show that if you have like a heavier down comforter, that you feel more secure and safe. And that's like, by the way, that's like primal and biological. Humans, at the very base, want to feel safe. So that's something that could be taking. And then the most important thing that I would suggest, if you have any ancillary lights, and I know some people can't help this, they live in condos or whatever, or apartments, and it is what it is. But all the little green and red lights in your room really freaking matter. So unplug that crap, cover them up. Like, I am OCD. When I go to hotel rooms, I unplug all the alarm clocks. Okay, no alarm clocks, no green light. If it has one of those weird like window type of air conditioning units, what I'm talking about, and it's like lit up like a Christmas tree, I put a shirt or a pair of pants over it just so I don't see. Like, sleeping dark will change your world.
Absolutely, yeah. That, and the one thing we haven't talked about really is consistencies. It really is
good.
With a lot of this stuff. We want to take the easy road. We want to do the passive stuff. It's just doing it. Like saying that every night I'm going to go to sleep at the same time, regardless of what happens. I'm going to get in bed at the same time. I remember I had trouble sleeping. I tried to read Moby Dick, one of the most boring books I've ever read in my life, but I wanted something to put me to sleep, so I read Moby Dick, and it took me 3 years. It took me 3 years to read it because it started to put me to sleep so quickly. So I'd get like 2 pages in, and then I'd be out like a light. It was perfect. So I recommend Moby Dick if you're trying to get some sleep. But at the same time, consistency. Every night, 8 o'clock, I'm in, or whatever it is. Honestly, for me, I'm in bed by 8:30. I'm going to read my book, and then I'm going to fall asleep by 9:15. And putting your body, that's why we mentioned the 5 sleep cycles. You're trying to go through those 5 cycles every night, regardless of when you go to sleep. But consistency is really key. Even on the weekends, even when you don't have to wake up at the same time, waking up at the same time, you're on your Whoop. You check your Whoop recovery scores. If you sleep the same as you normally do on a Saturday, your recovery score is going to be much better than sleeping 2 or 3 extra hours.
Yeah, so that is something that I've done for a very long time. It's called circadian rhythms, right, guys? So or going to bed, waking up at the same time, no matter what he just said, no matter holiday, no matter weekends, and that's exactly what I do. I have gone to bed and woken up at the same time for at least 3 years, at least, and I can't. Yeah,
wow, that's impressive.
Even I don't care if it's Christmas Day, I don't care if it's Sunday. I am maniacal. My wife thinks I'm insane.
I love it.
Yeah, no, and I am so like I'll never forget when we first started like dating. It was I'll tell a quick story. So first started dating, she would get home from work before me, and we would be sitting on the couch. And so I go to bed at 9. I'm in the bed, like my feet are under the covers at 9. And, so I would start wrapping up things and kind of getting ready for bed at about 8:45. And she'd be like, "Why are you going to bed?" I was like, "It's my bedtime." She's like, "Well, you're an adult. You don't have a bedtime." I was like, "I know." By the way, that's ball status. When you choose, discipline is freedom, guys. Jocko Willink.
Amen. I love that.
Okay.
That's good.
So I said, no. Like this is how it works. Like I'm taking this serious. Like I'm taking my training serious. I'm taking my eating serious. I'm taking it all serious. So she couldn't understand, and it was like this. I mean, I don't want to call it a fight, but it was just this. It was this tension, right, between like, I think you should stay up, talk to me, and I'm going, you're crazy. I'm going to bed. Like, you'll learn.
Man, you're getting into marriage now. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, no, we're gonna do it. And now, fast forward, how many years? A year? I don't know. A year and a half? I don't really know. But fast forward quite some time down the road, she's getting in bed before me, and it's like, look, you know what? Here's the deal. I talk about this a lot, guys. If you are an elite athlete, like, you've got to have people in your community, in your circle, like the 5 closest people to you. And obviously that includes, for a lot of you, your partner, someone that maybe you're living with, whatever the case is. Like, you've got to have that person that understands what you are trying to do. Because if not, there is going to be tension with who you are and who they want you to be, who you want to be and who they want you to be. So ultimately, there needs to be this level of, symbiosis. Well, that's a big word, right? This idea that you're living as kind of one. You're moving as one. Because if not, what happens is you're under so much pressure to make the other person happy that you end up really living in a way without meaning. And I'm not saying this to say you should neglect your partner, you should neglect your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. But, if you want to be an elite level athlete, you're going to have to be selfish. Okay? You can talk to any elite level athlete.
Sure.
They are going to tell you this. We talked to Sam Smith a few weeks ago, and I asked him point blank, I said, do you think if you're trying to be the best in the world, individual sports, in the best in the world, do you believe that a prerequisite is you have to be selfish? He said, absolutely, 100%. And I agree with that. And I'm not saying you're neglecting the person, but it's a hell of a lot easier when you are both on the same page and have the same vision, the same goals. And it sounds like, from what you've just hinted at over the course of this last hour, that's kind of what, maybe you're not trying to get where Ellie is, or Ellie's not trying to get where you are, whatever, but there's this understanding and, more importantly, a respect for what you guys are doing individually is what I gathered.
Absolutely. Ellie's much better athlete than I am. She's putting a lot more into it than I am, and I really respect that entirely. And I'm on board with that. And if I wasn't on board with that, if I struggled with how much she trains in some of this stuff, we would not do well at all. But I am. And some of the things too, like I would love to be able to compete, and I would love to be able to train that much. I would love to do that, but I can't. I'm not in a time of life where I can. I've got to focus on other things. So I do CrossFit. I'm trying to be as competitive as I can with the time I have. And I'll put in the work to do it. But if I really think, and we've talked about this before with you and Ashley too, because you told me you're kind of putting your training a little bit back so you can focus on her as well. And that's big. I think it'd be really tough if both you guys are trying to do it. Well, it might be easier because you're doing it together.
Well, we are, but when it comes to like who needs to get their open scores in, and who needs to be a priority of like getting their quarterfinal and redoing, and these types of things, and like it's her right now, right? Because there's an age difference, and so I know my time will come. It's like you continue to put in the work, and one day your time will come. And there's an understanding that when that time is or does come, that the roles will reverse. I had this conversation with one of my athletes this week. I said, look, there are different seasons for different things and different roles in life, and it's very important that you understand this. I said, sometimes you're the hero of the story. Sometimes you're the guide or the support role of the story. It's very important to know the difference. It's very important to know the difference, because if you feel like you're supposed to be the hero of the story at this time in your life, and it's not your time yet, whether for a lot of reasons, but we won't get into that, then you will feel like you're what's the right word? You're going to feel insufficient in a way. You're going to feel like you're owed something, right? But if you realize, hey, in this role in my life, I'm supporting this person, being there, being a guide for this person, helping this person, you're going to be a lot more effective. And truly, I think it's an Abraham Lincoln quote, and I know I'm butchering it, but ultimately it's this idea that, I will train, I will put in the work, and one day my time will come. And I believe in that. I really do believe that. I don't think that's some hocus pocus crap. I really believe that to be true. And but unfortunately, some will never see the day that the time will come because they have not put in the work needed to warrant that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. And you're talking about almost Sam from Lord of the Rings. Samwise, he's Frodo's guy the whole time, and he knows that's his role the entire time, even when he takes the ring and gives it back. And that's, I think, especially in a lot of relationships, like you look at Tia and Shane, at some point in that relationship, and it was probably a lot easier because he's already a coach, but he had to say, it's Tia, and I'm the backup singer. That's it. And it's so cool that he did that, because man, the success that she's had, she wouldn't have had that without him, or she still wouldn't have it. Yeah. I'll say that because he's unreal.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I know we got off topic. We were talking about recovery and sleep, and then we went into a rabbit hole. But I really do think it's important, guys. If you're listening to this podcast, and I believe that people listen to this podcast are people that are trying to achieve something meaningful, to bring it back to kind of where we started this conversation, I truly believe that you have to audit your inner circle. And if the 5 closest people around you are not in support of what you're doing, or even I would say most like you, and when I say most like you, they value the same things that you value. They eat the way that kind of you eat. They sleep the way. Like, if they're not doing those things, then my guess is you're probably not around the right people to be successful. The people that are successful, and they say this every time they win championships, and it's not BS. I couldn't have done this without da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Because those are the people that handle the BS. Those are the people that are there when it's dark. Those are the people, like Matt Fraser talks about Matt O'Keefe, his manager. He talks about Sammy, his wife, right? All those people, I truly believe, helped make the man that we know to be the greatest CrossFitter on earth.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, sleep. Jesus. All right. Sleep, recovery. So, I hear a lot about these different recovery techniques, whether it's like the sleeves that people put on their legs, the vibration, the electrical stim, needling.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that, and some of them I do. I don't even know if they're good for me, but I mean, I'll be honest, I do them. So I want to know your opinion, and you can talk about as many or as few as you'd like, but I named a few.
Yeah. So, and we can talk about blood flow restriction as well, because I'm a big proponent. I think that's if you're not doing blood flow restriction, it should be, and if you don't know about it, you need to learn about it.
Let's start with the more like the earlier thing, and then we can wheel into BFR.
So, recovery, there's so many things out there that have a really strong placebo effect. So, like, honestly, some of that stuff is dry needling, some of the stuff is foam rolling. A lot of it has a placebo effect where you think it's going to help you, so it has a little bit of an effect to it. But as far as recovery itself and what really works, some of those things, E-stim is not a bad thing. Some of those recovery starts beforehand again. So it comes back to your nutrition, your sleep. I'll hit that one more time. Nutrition, sleep, water, your mindfulness. Are you stressed out? You're not taking a second for yourself. All of that plays a massive role in your recovery. But if you're talking about tools to help you recover, there is nothing better than blood flow restriction training. And we'll talk about that in a second when we get there. But E-stim, we use that in conjunction with blood flow restriction training. Really, every athlete I have, I tell them about blood flow restriction training, and I say, if you don't get it from me, get it from somebody else, because it's going to be the best thing you can do for prepping you and preventing things. Or, I mean, talking about a 300% spike in lactate, which results in 150% spike in human growth hormone. It's pretty sweet. But so some of the other recovery methods that work pretty well is, active recovery. So not just throwing a tool on you or hitting a foam roller, but you finish a workout and you don't lay on the ground for 10 minutes. You actually hop on a bike, you hop on something, and you gradually lower your heart rate down. You're actually giving your body an ability to take that buildup, that metabolite buildup, and not only flush it out properly, but let those metabolites work for you. Because you have this great response from exercise. And also, later on in the day, when you're trying to go to bed, like taking things that help that, like creatine. Like, I think we've gotten away from talking about a lot. For some reason, a lot of athletes don't take creatine. I have no idea why. It's only going to help you.
I take that shit like it owes me money. Like, people are like, dude, you're obsessed about it. I'm like, yes. Because we don't, people don't realize you got to eat so much freaking meat to actually get that. Like, and I'm talking like red meat. And I don't eat, I eat some red meat, but I'm not eating, like, I'm not going to quote it because there's going to be somebody that is like, oh, he said it wrong. But it's an absurd amount of red meat to get what you like, to get 7 grams. Like, if you're a guy, and you're getting, a 200-pound dude, and you're getting 7 grams of creatine a day, like, it's an absurd amount of red meat. You're never going to eat it.
Yeah. Protein intake is huge, too, as far as the nutrition side of things. But a lot of things athletes do that's really detrimental to them is, as soon as you finish a workout, they want to go, honestly, in like cryotherapy or something like that. And not as soon after, but maybe a little bit after. Especially after a strength event, if you go into cryotherapy itself. And there's a difference between being in the cryo chamber and being in an ice bath. There's actually a huge difference there.
So explain that, because I don't know this either.
Yeah, so like the cryo chambers where people go into with the dry ice and all that.
Dude.
So we found a lot of that.
Real quick, my balls freeze off, and I know that's like very crude, but that is like they give you socks for your hands and your feet, but dude, they gotta help something down there because
Yeah. No, it's
anyways,
brutal.
go ahead.
For some reason, though, the cryo chambers themselves aren't as beneficial as getting into a big ice bath. And it's considerable, like almost to the point where we're saying a cryo chamber may be on that placebo side.
Really?
You know, because there's positive. If you think in your head, I'm doing something that's going to benefit me, there's power in that. There's really is power in that positive mindset, and that can help you. But as far as what it actually does from a recovery standpoint and a prep standpoint, if you can have the option of getting in an ice bath, get in an ice bath, but maybe not after strength, maybe not after squatting. Maybe not after something where you're trying to build muscular capacity or muscular endurance, because that can actually blunt the effects of it. So there's certain things like that, like beforehand, before you do something, static stretching, before you squat, before you do something heavy, not necessarily for an aerobic event, it's not going to matter as much, but for something heavy, static stretching is going to blunt the ability of your muscle to fire. So we know about post-action potentiation. You rip that big deadlift from the ground, and then you go hit a snatch or something that's going to, increase the muscle activity. Static stretching is going to have the opposite effect beforehand.
Okay.
So certain things like that, there is more to it.
So you said that that strength and chiro, that's really not what we want. It is. So what about just like metabolic conditioning, so like metcons and like those types of things? Is that still hold up, or we don't?
Yeah, it's fine for a metabolic condition because that's more of a heart rate type thing, unless, depending on what your athlete. But let's say you've actually done something that is metabolic. It's more heart rate intense, and you go through your proper recovery. So you still do your active recovery. You slow that heart rate gradually back down, and then getting into an ice bath or something like that where it has that shock to your CNS and kind of calms your body down further. That
so
can help.
Then why is the ice bath better?
We don't know. I wish I could tell you that.
Okay, so you don't actually know.
I don't know. This is actually good. This is actually new. We've started seeing more and more research studies come out in the past 2 years on this, so it's a pretty new topic. But athletes use the ice bath compared to athletes who use cryotherapy have better results.
So I have a question then, because I see a lot of people. I have friends that do this. They do like ice bath and they do sauna, and then they get back in the ice bath. So why? So it's what do they call it? Polar training, or you probably know the word for what I'm trying to say. But why does that work? Polarized training.
That's something. A lot of it comes back to the metabolites. Okay. So we talk about we're talking about those positive things in your bloodstream that kind of come through. It could be trying to think of a few of the things that come up. So it could be just a good you get the potassium pump going, sodium potassium pump to create a muscle firing. You get those byproducts from that pump happening, from entering into an energy system, just like when you work out. So you hop into the sauna, or you get in the ice bath. That's going to secrete. It's going to really lower the amount of activity in your body. It's going to bring it down. It's going to really bring you're just going to skyrocket your heart rate initially, and then it's going to start to bring it down. When you get into the sauna, and you have a flip effect. So those metabolites it's like, think about it like if you have a Chemex and you're making coffee with a Chemex, and that coffee blooms on top. So those metabolites, you're going to give them a better flow, and then you hop back into the ice bath. It's going to trap them. So, and I can explain this because of blood flow restriction training. A lot of what we're trying to do is trap those metabolites in the limb, so your body responds to it with a hormonal response. So a lot of it comes down to, are we getting the hormone response we really want to get?
Okay, explain metabolites, because you've said that word a lot.
Yeah, so think about it like positive things happening. So names of metabolites are going to be like
there's different ones.
Sodium bicarbonate things.
So there's different types of them.
Oh yeah, there's a tons of different types of them, and so the ones that the ones we're looking for, and the way I've looked into it more than anything else, is getting the metabolite flow that we can use to change our hormone regulation. So like we want to increase lactate to a certain potential. Simply because we're going to get a really positive human growth hormone response, and human growth can turn into testosterone later on, or can help start the pathway to create that. But also from the sense where we want to think about lactate. People think about the lactate threshold, like bonking and things of that nature. It's not necessarily the lactate that does it. It's actually the hydrogen. So it's another byproduct, another metabolite. So hydrogen would be a metabolite as well. Of that whole system, and we're getting way into the rabbit hole.
I was just curious
with some of this, but like when you're running and you have a muscle cramp or something, a lot of it's going to be because you have so much hydrogen in your muscle that it can't fire. There's too much space taken up. But it's positive as far as recovery and training goes to make yourself a better athlete. To really, it's just like training your heart rate. Like you want to hit a higher heart rate, and then so next time when you go to train, you can hit a higher heart rate. It's the same thing with that metabolite entrapment.
Okay, so and that's where you're talking about blood flow restriction. So help me understand, because all I see is these really buff dudes on Instagram cutting off their blood circulation, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna lose a limb. Like,
so, dude, blood flow restriction is something that I'm so into this. Like I'm all into it. I came across it about 6 years ago, and we've got about 35 years of research behind it. The guy who initially started doing it, I think he was in Japan, I want to say, maybe China, I'm not sure, but he would torture people with blood flow restriction. Literally, he would torture them. He would find out what's the extent that we can do with a blood tourniquet. How can we stop blood flow, and what's the results of this? So on the good side of things, the guy who made it famous in America, Johnny Owens, he was trying to figure out a way to train military personnel who were amputees. How do we strengthen the residual limb? How do we strengthen that limb? And we started seeing some really wild results. So, and it's become much more scientific than just wrapping your arm with voodoo bands. I don't recommend that at all. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to occlude the amount of venous blood return. So deoxygenated blood. We want to create a limb that is very deoxygenated to get these effects. So arterial blood, oxygenated blood's entering the limb, but venous blood's not returning. So the whole area is coming very hypoxic. And there's no oxygen there. So you burn through all of these type 1 fibers, all your type 1 aerobic fibers. Think of a marathon runner. You burn through all of that stuff, and the only thing you can access is type 2 fibers, sprinter fibers. So doing that in itself is really positive, because that's what we're trying to train anyways. We're always trying to get to that point with strength training, with any of that, to get there. On the flip side, though, when you do this, because you're occluding a limb, your cardiac output goes up by about 24%, because it's your heart's having to pump harder to account for the restriction in the blood. Well, all of a sudden, when you do that and you have this huge hypoxic limb, the amount of lactate, your body's under so much stress, you're using so much of your glycolytic system, the byproducts of that secrete a ton of lactate. So like for a CrossFit workout, you have about 130 to 150% increase in lactate. That's going to create more human growth hormone for the rest of your day. With blood flow restriction training, if done appropriately, we can get that number up in the 300s, a 300% increase in lactate. The pituitary gland senses the lactate, it senses it, so it responds by secreting a ton of human growth hormone. So you are getting pure recovery, and recovery is building to the body when you do this. So from a strength and an aerobic standpoint, it's just incredible. We're taking things like, instead of taking 3 months to add 10 pounds to your back squat, it takes a month. You can, if you have people who have trouble with joints, you can instead of having a 400-pound back squat, you can put 95 pounds in the bar, and you've created the same stimulus, because you're getting those type 2 fibers going crazy anyways. So it really has come back to, we just have this, there's such a benefit with training power, and blood flow restriction helps us do that at an unreal level.
So you're obviously using something to restrict the blood, right? All right.
Yeah.
So you're what do you call the mechanism that you use to restrict the blood?
It's a tourniquet.
Okay, so it's a tourniquet. Okay, and
it's a tourniquet. It's a tourniquet. It's a thick tourniquet. It has to be a certain surface area. That's why the voodoo bands don't work. They're too thin. You need to have a higher surface area. And there are times when you want to occlude 100%. Like, for instance, the athletes I have, 7 days before a competition, I have them doing something called IPC, ischemic preconditioning. And so they're going to sit in the cuffs for 5 rounds, 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off for 5 rounds at 100% occlusion. The limb's fully occluded. And we've got plenty of research showing us that athletes who do that beforehand, particularly in sprinters, end up having much better performance when it comes to competition time. So have them do that 100%. But normally, and there's a lot of nuance in this. Like I did a hatch squat cycle last week in blood flow restriction training where I only had a 40% occlusion on my limb. It really comes down to how far into failure can you get your athlete? How far are they willing to go into failure?
Okay, so just because, so we're talking limbs, so arms and legs. All right, so
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like like all these questions now. Like, is it like, are you putting the tourniquet below the joint, like below the knee, above the knee, like all the way up? Like, how does it work?
Only two spots you can do it is shoulder here, right below the shoulder
Yeah.
joint, humeral neck, right above your bicep, and then right on your groin. So right on the hip. Those are the only two spots you need to do it.
Ah, okay, all right. So these people that are like putting it like on like their elbow, they're not doing it right.
No, they're not doing it right. And the thing is, you have a really good response muscularly below it, but the human growth hormone is systemic. So your whole body gets the bump. So you really only need the two spots.
Oh, interesting. Okay, gotcha. And
It's fast. It's fascinating. Blood flow restriction is truly, and we're learning so much more about it. There's so much more coming out about how to use it. It's truly. I've seen some really cool stuff. Like even studies where you take kids who are in the hospital in a vegetative state and they'll put blood flow restriction cuffs on them in that vegetative state, and normally the brain will actually shrink, and these kids, their brain does not shrink and their muscles don't atrophy if it's done consistently. They stay pretty much the same. It's incredible.
that's cool. That's super cool, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Okay, so because I mean I've seen them on like Amazon and stuff. People can buy them, but I guess, but it sounds like you kind of have to know what you're doing. You can't just put them on, right?
You have to know what you're doing, and there's a basic rep scheme that we used for a while. It's basically 30, 15, 15, 15 with 30 seconds rest in between at 80% inclusion for the legs and 50% inclusion for the arms. But again, it's science. Like a lot of times we'll have people come up here and we'll just get them fitted for the cuffs and then send them on their way so they can train with it. But you can get, it really is like a good strength conditioning program. You can get as nuanced with it as you want to. You can make it as individualized as you want to. But there's benefits just for the layperson using them. I mean, I'm telling you, I've seen femurs that have totally been fractured, and they do blood flow. We have studies in this. They do blood flow restriction training, and the femurs regrow together. They do it better than they normally would. It's because all the human growth hormone in the limb.
Dude, I freaking love science. It's just super cool. I mean, it really is. Like, the stuff we're learning is just, I can't wait to see what comes out in the next 10 years. It's like the athletes coming up and,
goodness,
you know, are just only going to hopefully have better access to things. So I'm all for it. Cool, man. Do you want to chat about anything else before we get off here? Is there anything you would like to add before we conclude?
I will add this for any athlete out there who's looking to really take everything to the next level and really force themselves. Do not take the easy road. And I see it all the time. I'm in a space in physical therapy where there's all sorts of easy passive things where, I want to get my back rubbed on, it's going to help. No matter what you do, rarely is the narrow road the right road to take. It's normally, the wide road. It's normally the narrow road. It's normally doing the hard things. They will make you better. And I know you're big on this too, but all I am and all that coach is a guide. So be very judicious about the guides you get. And then once you find a good guide, then stick with them. But be very judicious about it. There's a lot of bad medical practitioners out there. And there's a lot of bad coaches out there. But there are some good ones, and find a good one, and they can help you a lot.
That's right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I say this a lot. It's like, look, guys. I've said it, and then I think Matt Torres was, when he was on here, he said it very eloquently. He said, I just look at what the people at the very top that are winning are doing and copy them. So if they have a physio, get a physio. If they have a nutritionist, get a nutritionist. If they count their macros, you probably should count your macros. If they train 2 or 3 times a day and like that's your goal, like you probably should train 2 or 3 times a day. And so I'm for it, man. I'm all for it. I think body work, physios, whatever. I think it's just it's a reality of the sport being professionalized and the sport being the sport of CrossFit, and it's something that's needed. It's no longer a luxury. It's like, this is what I have to do, and I think once we start looking at it as this is what we have to do to be elite, I think we'll be a lot better off than saying, well, that's just a luxury to be able to do something like that. It's like, if you want it bad enough, I'm in the boat that says you'll sacrifice every other thing around you to make it happen. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
All right, dude. Thank you so much for your time. This was incredibly enlightening. Maybe one day we'll come back and finish our marriage podcast.
Would love to. Would love to talk about that. I have to get the wives on here to do that one.
Yeah, that would be fun. See, there we go. Good podcast idea. I love it. I'm always looking for good ideas. All right, man. Thank you for your time again. And to all you guys, we'll see you next time.